So if we take a look at the coastal geomorphic profile in this particular place, coral that I mentioned is this one. So this one can be relatively fitting to the previous low tide level. And then we also found some oyster fossils that is relatively consistent with the previous high tide level, as well as the shoreline angle. So based on these information, we know that the 1762 earthquake actually have a co-seismic uplift of about 5 meters at these particular sites. This 5 meter is actually quite large. However, if we go to other places, the situation is relatively different. For example, there is a site in southwestern coast of Romery Island. Here we have several levels of marine terraces and wave-cut platforms. And based on the age of one coral sample and the lowest terrace, the shoreline angle of the lowest marine terrace, we actually see that the uplift is only about 1 to 2 meters at this site. Another site is in the northern coast of the Romery Island. And this particular site, instead of coral, we actually have oysters. We actually have very nice level of current living oysters. We have another level of dead oysters, uplifted and dead oysters. And the age of this oyster also tells us that they are very likely to be uplifted by the 1762 earthquake. And this time, the uplift is only about half meter to 1 meter. So at the end, we found that there is a significant difference in the uplift amount of the 1762 earthquake. For example, in the western coast of Maon or Chiduba Island, we see about 3.7, 4.5 meters, which are quite large. But then that number become quite small in the eastern coast of the Chiduba Island, 0.8, 1.4. At the western coast, central western coast of Romery, we actually have a very high number of 5 meter. And that number goes to smaller, both to the south and to the north, 1.6 here, 1 or 0.9 here. And in the eastern coast of Romery, pretty much there's no uplift in 1762 earthquake. So there's this huge difference in the co-seismic uplift amount. This is very, very rare to be produced by a simple megathrust earthquake. So Dr. Wang Yu and I actually did something that we made a profile to show this uplift amount. And we did some kind of modeling to see what kind of movement we are required to create this kind of uplift pattern. Turn out that we need 2 upper plate splay faults. So it's actually showing here. So we not only we need 1, we actually need 2 upper plate splay faults that broke together, ruptured together with the megathrust that can produce this kind of uplift pattern. So higher in the western Chiduba, lower in the eastern Chiduba, higher again in the western Romery, and lower again in the eastern Romery. This kind of pattern can only produced by rupture of 2 upper plate splay faults and rupture together with the megathrust in order to produce this kind of situation. Okay, so this time, and these 2 upper plate splay fault clearly is related to these two anticlines, are sort of related to these two islands. Okay, so now we have solved one question. Now we know that 1762 Arakan earthquake is not just a simple megathrust earthquake. It actually incorporated the rupture of the upper plate splay fault as well. Okay, so is there any evidence for such faults offshore? Well, we don't have good offshore like seismic reflection information. We don't have very good bathymetry data offshore, but we can still see the topography of the land to see if there is any evidence for this kind of fault. So again, we go back to the central part of Western Romery Island. At this site, the same place that we found the 1762 earthquake uplifted corals, we found that actually there are very wide marine terraces, T1. And in fact, there is also a small islands offshore that is also flat. And recently, well, actually, according to local people, this small island was connected to the mainland, forming the big Terrace 1, and just recently being cut off by coastal erosion. We did a topographic survey. So this is offshore small islands. We did a long topographic survey all the way onto that island, and then we found this. So as you can see, the T1 surface is slightly higher here, become lower near the coast, and interestingly, it actually become much higher on these offshore islands. So this kind of topography telling us that this T1 is having a back tilting movement that is back or the right-hand side of the figure. So this is consistent with a offshore reverse fault that is probably not too far away from the coastline. So we do have some kind of topographic evidence to show the presence of this fault. Okay, so are there any other earthquake events that are related to these faults other than 1762? So again, we go back to the Romery Island, and in the northwestern corner of the Romery Island, we found many corals. Very, very nice place. This is this place called the Legamol. In Legamol, we found many corals, and not only they are corals, they are flat-topped corals. So what does that mean? These flat-topped corals means that it has grown to some kind of low tide level, and then because of uplift, it was uplifted and killed. So we have a very nice example here, like in Sumatra. So this top layer, this is also a flat-topped coral, and then the top layer is the sea level before the 2004 earthquake. And then after the 2004 earthquake, the sea drops down because of land uplift. Sea drops down to here. The lower part are still alive. So the difference is the uplift of the 2004 earthquake at these particular sites. So this kind of flat-topped coral is very important. So we do a lot of survey again. So you can see that Professor Wang Yu starts to do survey again, and then we also collect many samples to do the uranium thorium dating. And then we found that at these particular sites, there are 3 groups of corals. And then middle group was actually uplifted and killed by the 1762 earthquake. And then above it, Above them, there is another group recording an earlier earthquake before 1762. No big deal. We know that there are older earthquakes. However, to our surprise, there is actually a lower group of coral that recording a younger event after 1762. This is very surprising. So we go back to see the historical documents, and we found that there is actually a 1848 earthquake, a local earthquake in northern Rummery Island that is likely only affecting northern Rummery Island. And then our corals recorded this earthquake. So this is actually a first report of any local earthquake younger than 1762. In the central part of Rummery, back to this figure, we don't actually see this younger event because, as you can see, this 1762 earthquake coral is the lowest coral. So there's no record of younger event, which means that younger event not affect this location, only affect northern Rummery. So this is a local event. However, if you look carefully, you see terrace 2 here, right? This terrace 2 is only slightly higher than terrace 1. So it recorded an older event, older than 1762. So in this smaller island, we also have this slightly higher, older terrace 2 here. And then we also have some coral samples that telling us that these corals are killed about 100 years older than 1762. So about 1650 or so. So in central Rummery, we don't have younger earthquake after 1762, but we have older local small earthquake, maybe in 1650. So under this observation, we found that in Western Myanmar, it is likely that we have a bimodal earthquake situation, that sometimes we have giant megathrust earthquake like 1762, and sometimes we have smaller local earthquake such as 1848 or 1670 or 1650, something like that. They are produced by the rupture of the upper plate structure, the splay fault. So remember that our collaborator, our friend Shishikura-san, actually have done a lot of studies in this area. And what he did is he mapped a lot of the marine terraces and collected a lot of the marine dating materials such as corals or oysters from the marine terraces. And then based on his results, he proposed that in this particular site, he proposed that there are 1, 2, 3, and maybe 4 large earthquake events, very similar to the 1762 megathrust event. And each of them have uplifted something like 4 meters. And then the time interval is something like 900 years. However, this model only includes the giant megathrust event, but not the upper plate smaller local earthquake events. Therefore, we think that this 900 years recurrence interval is probably too long, maybe overestimate of the overall recurrence interval of earthquakes. And based on this, we believe that instead of this only giant earthquake, every earthquake 900-year interval model, we think that we need to add a lot of these local, smaller splayfall earthquake. So if we consider this smaller earthquake produced by this upper plate splayfall, the overall earthquake frequency will be much higher in Western Myanmar. What does that mean? This means that not only we will have huge megathrust earthquake that produce large tsunamis, we may also have smaller but local earthquake that also produce some smaller but still locally damaging earthquakes for the western coast of Myanmar. For example, here is the Napali beach area that many of you are familiar with. So this kind of information will be very important for future any establishment in this area, including the Napali beach. So because of that, we also have done a little bit study in that area. So for example, this is the Napali Beach Airport. We actually have done some digging of the coastal area in this place, and we found this kind of situation. We think that the lower part is the estuarine or swamp deposits, and then that was covered by a sand layer, maybe an event layer. However, with our collaborator, Sawai-san of Japan, we found that this sand layer is not, this sand not from the ocean. The depositional environment likely a fresh to brackish water environment. So it is more likely that we are seeing a sandbar propagation record, not a direct evidence of the tsunami event in this area. Okay, so now we know that we have splay faults. The splay faults are important for 1762 earthquake. And then we also see that they can produce local earthquake. How about long-term geomorphic development of these islands? Are they also related to these faults? So again, we go back to see the northern part of Ramari Island. In this part, we found that middle Holocene microatoll currently are located at about 2 meters high, which means that it actually have some kind of actually, the middle Holocene sea level is about 2 meters higher than today. So that means in this particular place near Jiaopiu, there's probably no significant uplift in this part. But in the northwestern coast of Ramari, we see that the sand middle Holocene coral currently are at the elevation of about 10 meters. 8 to 10 meters, which means that there is a significant long-term uplift in western side of Ramari. Similar situation in the south. In southeastern side of Ramari, we also see middle Holocene corals. Currently only have 2 meters high, probably not much uplift. But in the southwestern side of Ramari, we see several major steps of marine terraces, which means that there are continuous uplift of the coast. So western side, uplift. Eastern side, not much uplift. And then in the central part, we also see a similar situation. We see a eastward tilting of the higher terrace and the eastward drainage development. All of these rivers are flowing to the east. Many, only very, very short local rivers are flowing to the west, indicating that the entire topography has a eastward tilting. And then finally, the more eastern side of the Ramari Island, we probably see no uplift and maybe even some subsidence, which means that these long-term geomorphic topographic developments are clearly related to this upper plate splay fault. The western side is uplifting higher and faster, and the eastern side is not much uplifting and maybe even subsiding. Okay, so Mill told me, so this kind of upper plate structure is actually quite normal. There are common features along convergent plate boundaries. For example, this is the Nankai Trough offshore southwestern Japan. We clearly see splay faults, and sometimes they have co-seismic rupture together with the megathrust. For example, in the 1946 Nankai Trough earthquake, we see this kind of situation. In the 1964 Alaska earthquake, we also see the upper plate splay fault rupture together with the megathrust. In the 2010 Chilean earthquake, we see also upper plate structure, but this time is actually a back thrust. But that's also ruptured together with the megathrust in the 2010 Chilean earthquake. However, in our study, we clearly see that not only they can break together with the megathrust, they can also break by themselves to create a locally important earthquake and maybe tsunami hazard for Western Myanmar. Okay, so I see that my time is a little bit short, so I'll do a summary here. So in summary, we found that major upper plate faults are present in offshore Western Myanmar. And these major upper plate faults are important in producing the 1762 Arakan earthquake, just like our modeling results showing. And then these faults have also produced some local smaller earthquake events, but these earthquakes, although they are smaller, they are important for local communities, as shown by our corals in northwestern side of the Romery Island. And finally, these faults are also important in responsible for the long-term topographic, geomorphic development of the island. So with that, I think I'll end here, and I will be happy to answer your question.